Hello, hello. Welcome you all to another day of Lunch and Learn. Wrong screen. So, this is Gregory here. I'm going to be hosting today's on October 30th. You've got Jared going to be hosting tomorrow's. And I think we can probably just jump right into this. Apologies, it's taking me a little bit to get everything situated here. So, if anyone's got any questions, you can start throwing them in the Q&A and we'll be glad to answer. I pull up the Q&A real quick just so we've got that available.
So we were supposed to, Neil asked earlier whether it was dinner or lunch. Yeah.
All right, James, I see yours since you're the first one in there. Let's get started with that while other questions will file in. Let me unmute you. Why is it not showing me participants? I'm clicking on it. Ah, there we go. All right, James, can you give us a little bit more context
Sure.
on what you mean by assignments?
Yeah, sure. So I have a requirement that is where they want me to allow an assign to add an additional assignee or to a approver to an assignment, and that approver would have to approve along with the one that's approving the task currently. So in other words, an approver is bringing up a task, and on that form, they can add another approver and say, hey, I want this person to look at it too. So it's in addition to this person. So what I have to do, I mean, that's not an issue. I can just assign another task, but the issue is how do I map who is, that they've both done their part.
Ah, okay. Let's
Well,
see
I'll move ahead
here.
with with the next, with the flow and stuff.
I've got an idea forming. Let's see if this will work. So the idea, let me just make sure that I understand fully what the ask is here. You
Mhm.
have someone that on a form will be able to request if they want an additional approver for an
Yeah,
assignment.
yeah.
When an
On the,
additional approver is requested, you need to be able to dynamically map them as someone that will be able to receive the assignment. And on top of that, both assignments have to be approved by each approver, or sorry, the assignment has to be approved by each approver before you can proceed going forward.
correct.
Gotcha. So it's not one or the other, it has to be both.
Has to be both, yeah.
Hmm.
So I can't just add them to the assignment and allow that to, because if you do that, then either one of them could approve it and they would just move forward.
Right. I see what you're saying. Hmm. I got an idea for this. Let's create a form real quick. So we'll have the approve form. This will be the one for the approvers. Please approve this. We're going to save that. Don't need any additional details there. And then we've got another form where they have to be able to select the approvers. So,
Well, on that form, actually, that's going to be an add task form that you just created. Like if we made that an add task form.
mhm.
So as they're approving, they can say, oh, and I also want this other person to approve it.
So it's not the person requesting it. The approver
The
has to be able to
approver,
add
yes,
on the
because the
form.
approver is saying, okay, I got this thing I need to approve, but I also want so-and-so to take a look at it before it finally goes through.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a little bit simpler actually, because there are a few ways that we can probably do that here. So my first thought, going in here, edit this. My first thought would be to create a different outcome path to add an approver, right? And then I spelled that wrong, my bad. Now, do they need to specify in the form who's approving it, or is that going to be
Yes.
separate logic?
Yes, they will know the, well, we call it an FSU. They will know the ID of the person that they want to approve. And they're just
Mm,
gonna add it onto the form. And I'll be able to derive the email address from that ID.
okay. So my thought goes to, let's get checkbox here. Might be 2 words. Yeah, there we go. So what I'm thinking now for this build is you've got a checkbox that you can select. This
Mhm.
will then toggle who you want the approver to be, right? Maybe
Yeah,
something like an email address. When you check that, it will make this email address visible.
yeah. Mhm.
You want to run this only on the add approver outcome, not on the approve outcome.
Okay, yep,
Yep. So when you add an approver, we can kind of say it something like approve and add approver if we wish them to be like, I'm cool with this, but I also want this person to go through it, right?
got it. Mhm.
Yep. So, whoops, wrong thing. Just to make it clear. You can reassign the same form without changing the state of that assignment, right?
Sure.
Because if you're going through extension data, case entity where you're tracking it, you can even create a separate state. So I don't have an entity set up yet,
Mhm.
so it's not going to do anything. But you could
Right,
set entity state to like waiting on secondary approval, and
right,
then just run it through that same form again, pass in
right,
all those details.
right.
And then one thing that we can do to determine whether or not this is the initial assignee or someone else, if you need that logic, is be able to not pass out the approvers. Here we go. Let me go back into this and explain what I mean. This checkbox here can also add as a Boolean check for any active form flows in this that
Mhm.
should run if this is checked on the new one running.
Yep.
Or we can create a separate flag for that. But
Mhm.
then you can just run that to the exact same form again, right? Let's say approve goes to the end. Add approver will set the entity state. I don't have an entity for this, but new state, awaiting second approval.
Yep.
Wow, I really cannot spell today. What's going on? All right, just do it like that. And then pick the same form again. Pass in any outputs that you would need from this. So if you want all the extra stuff in here to be optional, we would have to make sure that, any additional fields, like maybe you've got selection. Why'd I do this? This was just going to take longer. Maybe you've got a selection here. I'll just put name, something simple. And then this one required for approve, optional for approve and add approver. So that would either get filled out by someone or dynamically passed in, however you wish. And now that gives you the option to pass that into the same form that we're picking here
Yep. Hmm.
into our inputs for name. Is that making sense? Or
Yeah,
is that not
so
quite
that,
filling
that part
the...
I get. It's the part of now I need to know that both of those people approved it before I can move on any further. They both,
Well,
I can't just add it to the original approver list, assignee list. I have to have a separate one, and then both of those people have to have approved it before I can move on. So the original approver and the person they added both have to have approved it before we can move on. Is that what that's going to do right there?
that's what it would do if they're
Because
adding
what if
it to
they,
the additional approver.
if they, that would work if they had approved it, right? But
Right.
what if that approver says, oh, I'm not going to approve this until this other person has approved it? Then I
Ah,
will approve it. So they're saying, hey, you take a look at it, then we'll do the final approval. That's kind of what's happening.
oh, I see. So you need to be able to create an additional assignment.
Yes, and then track that
Hmm.
both of those people have approved before I can move on with the workflow.
Gotcha. Okay, I see what you're saying. Hmm.
Yeah,
Got
that's
some
the tricky part.
ideas.
I kind of have that logic, what you got there already, thought out, but it's like, all right, now how do I determine that they have both approved it? Do I have to like write a routine to check both of those assignments
Mm.
for completion, something like that?
Well, if both are, hmm, if both are holding it up,
Hmm.
hmm,
Yeah,
that would definitely make sure that both of them have to go through it. But with this logic, they have to be able to branch off this one. This one could possibly be approved and then go back to this one for approval based on that.
yeah, if it hasn't been approved yet, because,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
the only
mean,
other, well, there may be other ways, but the initial other way is just so we have three outcome paths. One of them is this one approves it and sends it to a second one. This one sends it to the second one, right? And then but if it goes back, it's going to reassign it to them. I see. Hmm. And we don't want two assignments created for this person because that doesn't make any sense.
yeah, we don't want a new assignment created for that original approval.
Hmm. Let's see here.
Yeah. Oh, okay, thank you.
What happens? Can we branch them off of that is my thought. Let's see here. Let's edit this. Because that can't loop back around into it. I think that would break it. If also if any of our panelists have an idea on this, please let me know.
Just a tiny bit. This is Robert, by the way, everybody. I'm a little bit confused about the ask, just because I'm not good with drawings like this. But would a sub dialogue with another form inside it, would that, like, if you click a button, it then makes an assign, you click that button, it would then in the sub dialogue make an assigned form, and then both assignments would likely hit at the same time? Like not an in session form, but in a sub dialog box, there's an assignment, there's a form that's assigned.
Right. Yeah, that would definitely allow for an assignment to get created and then they wait for the other approver to be able to do that because you could even have it where the form wouldn't pop up to the person because you don't want this person seeing it, but you could do a sub dialogue where there may be a better way to do this. Let's uncheck this.
And then put an assigned form in there. But then, but the only problem is this wouldn't hold up the process. As soon as your parent form hit OK, it would go through because you want it to hold. Like, what is the hold up with your current logic? I'm just lost on the process a little bit, I guess.
Well, the issue is that at the end of the day, I don't know whether that original approver is going to actually approve it at that point. But I do know they're going to assign it to somebody else
Okay.
to approve as well. And they both have to, at the end of the day, before this workflow can move forward, they both have to have approved it. So it's a little tricky in that they could approve it and then assign somebody else, or they could assign somebody else and wait on them to do their thing before they approve it. But both of them have to be done before I can move forward with my workflow.
Yeah. Gary, can I draw on the screen for a second just to make
Yeah,
sure I'll get
absolutely.
caught up?
Please do.
Okay. So we're going in. There's a form. So this person, you're saying they can either approve it or send it where then you need both of these tasks to complete
Okay, I'll be right back.
before it moves on,
Yeah,
essentially, or
yeah.
this is a whole. Well, I'll go in a different color. if they hit that one option, like the blue option, it's done. The process is done and can move on. Or
Yeah, if they, I mean, they could say, oh, I'll just go ahead and approve it and never assign anybody an additional person. They could do that too.
okay, so they could approve it just themselves
Yes.
and it would
Because this is
end.
like a department head that says they have,
Yeah.
they can determine whether, well, I need, my budget manager to look at this as well before I
Okay.
approve it.
But if they hit an option saying, hey, I want someone else to approve it, both of those assignments need to be completed before it goes to the
Exactly.
end.
Exactly. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, that original department head still has to approve the form
Yeah. So it
or
seems
it
to
can
me
move
like our
forward.
problem is somewhere in this realm right here
It
of
is.
trying to
That's
get
where I
these
can't figure out completely.
you want them to be sequential, but you also want them to be parallel. Like there's this like in order for them to be parallel, it has to sequentially hit this first.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, that's the issue is I can't do it at the same time. Like, yeah, I couldn't use a branch logic because I don't know at the
Correct.
time that first task gets assigned, whether they're going to assign somebody else to it or not.
Okay, let me think here. Is there a step that we could use for a, again, I'm not super sure, but is there a step that we could use right here that would look at both assignments and if like with some logic, if both assignments are complete or not in open status, it goes one way and if the other way, but then it would be hard to re-ping this over and over again with being performant.
Yeah, that's just it. I would have to have some kind of
Yeah.
or process set up that little step you there would have to be a process that's basically just interrogating those two assignments continuously,
Yeah.
and before it can move the flow forward.
I don't mind if you want, Greg. We can try and build this a little later. I mean, I know we don't
Yeah, I
really
don't
have any
want
other
to take up
questions,
everybody's time.
but
I thought it would be a complex thing, and I've just, started thinking about through this myself. It's a requirement that came up the other day, and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
I'll
it's easy enough to assign somebody, but it's not easy to
yeah,
make them both have to approve it at the same
right.
before it can go forward.
Yeah, the real problem is like you said, it's both sequential. It's sequential or parallel, and
Right.
it's
It can be either or. There's like three different options it could go. They could just approve it without anybody. They can approve it and assign somebody, or they can wait to approve it and assign somebody. So,
what if you did something like that? This is my last thing, and I'm gonna draw again. Again, this is maybe not perfectly ideal, but what if you had something like this where you had your initial form where there's no real assignment being made here. And then you have your two options. You have your um like done option. It's basically I'm basically drawing out exactly what I had before. And then you have your I need a parallel option
yeah,
here. Um, but
yeah,
the branch and merge type thing.
right.
But
And kind of have like a preliminary form
yeah, the
that,
preliminary form doesn't actually make an assignment. Like you
right,
find a way to like where this is just basically populating data for this, and then you have that be an add assignment.
right. Yeah, the only issue with that is this department head, the reason they're on this form is they have been assigned this task.
Yeah.
A request has already been
So,
made by a requester. It's
yeah.
on their desk now, and they're getting this because they've been assigned this task. So this form is their task
Uh-huh.
originally. So, I mean, I get, if I did it this way that you just drew up, they would essentially be assigning themselves if they, another task, if they didn't just approve it completely.
And again, maybe I'm an idiot here. It might be a question, but and maybe we are just kind of overbuilding here. Like hypothetically, let's say we had a form, an initial form for your department head, and then they send it off to get approved by someone else. Wouldn't this still basically hold up the process? Because for it to get to assignment two, this one would have to be complete. I mean, maybe we're overthinking. Maybe
Well, that's just it. Yes, that would work if the requirement though does specifically state that they do not have to approve that form to assign something. In other words,
mm,
they could be like, I am not going to approve this until this person that I'm assigning it to has approved it. So it has to stay, it has to like be able to stay in an open state for that original approver if they want it to be in that state. I can't force them to approve it before it gets assigned to the next person.
yeah, I think we'll have to do some building. Me and Greg can look at it later. Maybe the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking it has to be in a sub dialogue, and then you do some type of like close in that sub dialogue. Once the second assignment is made, you close the form, and then they'll reload it. I'd have to. It is this weird like infinite loop of possibilities.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it. I think we can logic something out, but it's going to take probably more than the next five
Yeah,
minutes.
that's fine. That's fine. I just thought I'd throw it out there. I'm still going to be thinking through it too, just to see if I can come up with something. But yeah, it was just a tough request that I couldn't really come up with a good way to do initially. So, all right, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. And I've got some ideas thinking on it with the reassign task, like potentially making the first assignment actually assigned to the second person, and then just changing up who's assigned what, keeping a separate list of who's assigned both, rather than trying to create a new assignment.
Right.
But
As long as it still forced both of them to assign it, to
right,
approve it.
right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll look into that. And we'll absolutely see if we can provide anything on that.
So,
All right. Um, let's see there. So I see two people in the chat providing some insight into this problem. The branch and merge work here. It's possible. It's not guaranteed. And then there used to be a thing called approval chain for this. Not sure if decisions remove this feature. I can look into that. I've
I
heard of that, but I
I
haven't
actually
worked with
checked
that
real
much.
quick. I can say that it looks like it may have either been either quietly or accidentally removed between version 8 and 9. Because in my version 8 instance, I do have the approval chain editor, which is something you have in Forms, but not in version 9. So we just have to double check to confirm if that was intentional or not.
Hmm.
Because maybe it was just redundant or not needed in version 9.
Gotcha. Okay. Absolutely. We'll double check on that. Okay, we got two more Q&A questions right now from Matt. How does string list contains two of one work? I expected this result to return true. String list contains two of one. Let me unmute you real quick. There you go. So this is the step string list contains two of one. I'll just create a new flow for this. You should be able to talk now, by the way, Matt.
Okay, thanks.
So this is a rule. This is the default rule that you're using in here. And what are you passing into this? Like, what's your use case for using this?
Um, it's essentially just a list of some values, and I need to know if there are exactly two values in this list. The examples I showed shows, two nulls, two of those ABCA4s, and two other. But when I pass in the value to check ABCA4, I don't get it.
Let me see here. Let's take a look at what's going on with this logic. We'll
So I'd
debug it
have
as well.
AA, BB, CC, and I'm looking for B. I would think it'd expect true.
So this list currently contains two of the values that are listed in this one. So I'm just gonna pass one here and then one to a placeholder step just so it's easier to see where the flow goes. Whoops. Let's debug this real quick. Let's see what's going on here. And you're trying to use it for different values within the list or in the same line of the list, it looks like. So
Yeah, so if I had that list was 1 1 2 2 3 3, and I'm looking for or just, I mean, not 1 1 like that. I'm showing like,
oh, I see.
yeah.
I got you.
And if I
All
just
right.
try to pass like a 2 into that values, getting false.
Interesting. So it only treats them individually. It doesn't allow for duplicate items. It only checks for whether or not.
Yeah, and it seemed to work if you hit enter there
Mhm.
on the values, it'll create like a second item, and then this might return true. Or don't even do 2 2, just do a 2 and an enter.
That's going to bring back false.
Yeah.
So if I put 2 2s, I think it does have to match at least 2 items in the list. But it's interesting that it's not allowing for duplicates to take place. I'll have to look at the logic. If we put 2 1, this will work. This will pass true. But they have to be unique items that they're passing in. You're just trying to check if there are 2 of something that exist in this list, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we're looking for duplicates. Can it be 2 or more, or do you just want to look for any duplicates?
I'd like to find exactly 2, but 2 or more might work.
Okay, so if you find exactly 2, we may have to build out this logic or work for a rule, but that's not what that's not what this step is doing. This step is working towards checking for non-duplicate entries if at least 2 of the values in this list that are not duplicates exist in this list.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think this step is going to work for your use case. We can work on your use case. We can absolutely build out that logic real quick, but that's not what this step is doing. So let's see here. Let's get rid of that. And then one thing that we can do is be able to just loop through each and every item in a list, right? I'll start with at least a potentially long way to do it, and then we can try and optimize it from there.
All right.
All right, so a collection, we're going to make this constant. Oh yeah, it's not going to let us do that, is it? Because it dynamically assigns the object based upon what we're passing into it. So I need to create data beforehand. This is going to be a list of strings, and I'm going to do a. We'll just call we'll call this a list, and then I'll put it in over here. There we go. A, B, C, D, E, E, E. Done. All right. Let's get a few different examples in here. So this is going to be list. We'll pass that in dynamically to our collection, not constant. Select from flow. There we go. Let this adapt string item index. And now we'll run a rule that checks what the item is. So let's see here. How do we check twice? Let's think about the logic with this, because the idea is that you want to be able to add something to a list, right? Every time it goes through it, you're going to add something to a list, and you're going to compare if the item is on that list that's going through it. So we'll start with an add item to list step. I'll initiate one more thing over here, and this will just be initial list. List of strings, doesn't need anything in it. So everything that's going to go through here, we'll add to this list to check it. So we'll take the original list, which is our initial list. The new item is going to be the item that we pass in, and it's going to change the value of that initial list so we can keep using this same list over and over again. Now we'll get a rule. Run rule, make or create rule. All right. So we add the item to the list. It's going to exist on that list, and then we run a rule to check. Let's see here. check the item. We want to check the list, right? So we want to check if the item is in the list. It's always going to return true. We want to determine if the item that gets added to that list is already on that list. That's what we want to do. We want to check if the item that gets added to that list is already on that list. So we'll check it once initially. We can probably ignore the first one. We're going to need some logic to ignore that first one.
So I wouldn't be able to pass in a list of items. I'd have to.
I'm trying to think of how to pass in one list into another list and be able to rule out two duplicates.
I guess I don't understand the purpose of the string list contains then.
Yeah, the string list contains is designed to check if there is of the unique items on that list, if at least a certain amount exists on the other list that you pass into it. So when you pass in if you have a list of A, B, C, D, and you pass in the values in your other list, which are A and B, it will say, yes, 2 of the values on your new list exist in the other list. Or at least 2 of the values that exist on that are in that list exist on the other list. What it doesn't do is it doesn't check for duplicates. That's not what this rule is doing. And I see Marvin's adding some context here. Use a counter for matches found within the for each loop. Right. So we would be able to matches found. Yeah, hold on. But yeah, the reason I'm building out this logic is so that we would be able to count how many times this item occurs within the list that you're passing it into to check against, right? Because you've got a list you're creating here. A, B, C, D, E, and E. And we want to compare that to...
Is the whole goal just to remove duplicates?
Not to remove, but identify.
I think there's a good suggestion in the chat. If you run the for each in group and you just check if the group count is greater than 1.
Yeah, I mean, I can do through any of these types of flows. I just thought that the string list 2 of 1, if you only had one item in the list, then it would return true. But I think you need to have more than one.
Yeah, but this one would get you even if it's 1 or 2, and you can even look for is string equals 2.
Yeah.
All right, so we
Yeah.
pass in the for each for group.
But we could take this offline and we could just you can create a small example for you, Matt, and we can send it to you.
Okay, that'll work.
Yeah.
I think I understand where you're going though for this. So
Okay, cool.
Thank you though.
My pleasure.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, we'll work on that. We'll get that to you. All right. I see there is another question from Marvin. We'll go with that. Try to use Magic CSS on a form in Edge, but the pop-up window did not respond to any control highlighted on the form. Magic CSS on a form in Edge. Let me let you talk here.
Marvin, are you trying in a preview or are you just trying in the form designer?
He can almost talk. Give him a moment. There we go.
Okay, apologies.
There we go.
In form designer.
Yeah, you have to preview it. If you do preview, it'll work.
Okay, maybe that's what I did wrong then.
Yeah, I think it doesn't like fully load up that HTML code in the same way that it would be viewed as CSS. Like the designer is a different CSS than the form itself.
I ran across the video. You were talking with James about that several months ago, and I didn't notice that you were doing that in the preview mode, but I'll go back and look again. No big deal. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. It should work in the preview mode. I remember I've gotten myself in frustrations with that too, where I'm like, why is this not working? Because I just forget. Once you hit preview, I think it loads the HTML in a different way so that Magic CSS can actually access it.
That makes sense.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for that assist. Very much appreciated. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. Data repeater versus data grid. When should I use a data repeater instead of an advanced data grid? Well, those are two very different things, and I can go in and discuss those real quick in a different form here. Okay, so I'll just put in data so we get both here. Got a data grid, sorry, advanced data grid, and a data repeater. So for a data repeater, you have to be able to pass in some sort of complex type that you pick from an existing data repeater or one that you create. So this data that you pass into this data repeater is going to get mapped here, and you can dynamically add or subtract more of this type as possible. These do not have to be entities that are already created in the database. This is just following a template basically for what the type has to be. So if I were to go and let's see here. If I were to go into data structures, go to create types and integrate, and I'm just going to make a simple database structure here. We'll call this costume, right? Halloween flair on it. We need a name for the costume, right? We need the cost. And then we need accessories, right? What accessories are needed for this? And I'll just make this a string list. We're not going to use all these, but this is just the point of demonstrating a complex data type here. So if we were to go back into our form and pick or create source. So we're going to create a new data repeater control right here. When we pass in this stuff that we want to be able to map to, we have to pick from one of those data repeaters, one of those data names, those data source names. So we go in here, input type, and we're going to pick our custom type. And then we can map each of those to our data name. So we have name, cost. I want to put cost in the number box here, and I want to put the name here. I'll just map these two for now. So this, when run, will allow you to add and create different data structures or different repeaters inside of this that can be passed into the flow, that can be saved, edited, modified, do whatever you want with it. This data is not currently saved anywhere. It's not saved in the database. It's just a template to be able to use and save as that type later in your flow. The advanced data grid pulls from entities that are already created in your database somewhere. So you create a report, right? I'll pick the type costume for this one just to keep it consistent. I'll just call this the same thing. Why not? And then in here, this is going to pass it in the form of a report. So if I pick all of these things, let's pick name and cost like we did before, you're not going to see anything populating here, first of all, because we're not passing anything in. But we don't have any entities already created in our flow to be able to do that. So if I were to actually create them, here, let me exit out of this, and I'll show you how to preview this and use it in a form, just so we have a better visual indicator for what's actually being done here. I spelled that wrong. Let's see here. Show form, pick our form, pick existing, pass it out. And now here it's asking for a list, right? We don't have to put in a selected one, but you'll notice that the data repeater is looking for that data that is passed in as well under costume. Let me go in here and edit this real quick, because this should be coming from that data source to be able to be created and passed out. Where did it go? Where did it go? And let me also add the add remove buttons because that just is going to make life a lot easier to see exactly what's going on here. Add. Whoops. Wrong one. Remove. You can set these up with data repeaters too, but I'm trying to illustrate here. We don't have any data being pointed into this yet, right? We didn't pass anything into this. But for the data repeater, oh, whoops. I don't think I passed it into the flow correctly. My bad. I did not map something correctly. I also did not map these buttons correctly. Looks good. Passing that data. Data name should be costume. That should be coming in. Input data name. I'm going to call these different names just so there's no confusion here. Advanced data grid. Save. Exit. All right, there we go. Now we got our two separate ones. So for this one, I can pass in a list that's already created, or I don't have to. This one absolutely needs it, or it won't display anything. And let me ignore both of these and demonstrate that. So here, nothing's here, but I can add data to this to be passed out in a data grid, right? So I can I can name the costume wherever I want to name it and call it, say however much it should cost to be able to purchase this. I can add that. I can also go in here and remove anything I put in before. You can have those same actions here, but the data needs to be present. You can add it with some buttons, but the data will not display anything otherwise. It's like displaying what you're passing in the form of a report. I was gonna say, is that making any sense? But the person left, so I don't know if that answered their question or not. But I hope that's a solid enough overview of what they were looking for. So I'm gonna mark that as answered, and we're gonna go next to Alexander. How do you make different parts of the grid editable based on the form flow data? You should be able to talk now, Alex. Can you give me a little bit more clarity on what exactly you're asking?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm messing with my settings. Essentially, I have a data grid, and I know you can make data grids editable. Whatever fields you would like to be editable, you can make that change. What I need is, depending on what's selected at like a drop down, basically, like there's three different options for different kinds of quotes. Depending on what's selected, I need different parts of it to be editable and then other parts to not be, since all the quotes use the same data structure, but certain quotes get edited in different ways depending on what they are.
Mm. Okay, so we want to be able to edit. We want to be able to pick which fields on the data grid are editable dynamically.
Yeah, I wanted to dynamically select and
Ooh.
make it so my end users can edit them. Yes.
Interesting. All right, let's see how we can do that. So first we would set it to can't edit, of course. We want to make sure that we can edit whatever we're passing into here. And let's see here. Let's
Sorry.
save
1
this.
second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Yep, I just wanted to switch to my headphones. I don't know why volume of my computer's coming through low.
Oh, interesting. Let
I had to
me
switch.
let's make up some stuff here. Just gonna make up two costumes real quick, just so that we can pass something into us and see some form data going in. All right, so we have to be able to make sure this is editable. We didn't allow our data grid to be editable in the first place, so it's not going to let us do that. Now, how would we? Yeah, inline edit. That's what we need. Pick an output data name. That's fine. let's see. How would we change that? Because that's going more into the report side of things when you're selecting which field. We need an active form flow. I would be able to see this data. I don't know if it would be able to see this. Let's go check though. Let's take a look. We want to change the field that's editable. Let's see what our form data is going to give us here. So if I do a create data step, what can we find? I actually don't know what type we're looking for yet, so we'll explore that. We're going to save it, look, check for inputs from the flow. What do we got? So if we go to form data, we have the data repeater, the advanced data grid. It's enabled. We can do the selected.
What's the objective?
He wants to be able to dynamically change which fields are editable in an advanced data grid based upon certain criteria selected in the form.
I don't think there's an easy way to do that with the advanced data grid. You'd have to do that on a data repeater. Because with a data repeater, you can leverage active form flows, and then you can have that precise level of like, all right, only if we do if only if a certain data is selected or checked or a value, then you can create that customization. Because by default, advanced data grids, it just leverages the report designer. So you would have to like write some maybe custom CSS or something of that effect, which then that just makes the problem a little more complicated.
That makes sense. Gotcha. All right, so that would be the solution to this, is being able to go into the advanced data grid. We've got two different types already being displayed in this, so let's create our active form flow in the advanced data grid to work with that to determine what's being selected on the outside flow. So if I go here, we will create an active form flow, right? We'll change the edit. We can do the trigger for something that's outside of this. And then we want to be able to enable or disable editing. So if we just go to form rules, just enabling or disabling the control is exactly what's going to do this in the first place. It's not called edit here. So we'll pick one of the controls. We can go to the we want the form data. We got the number box and the text box. I'm going to block off the number box here and say that that is going to be disabled when a certain thing is triggered on the initial one. So all we need to do is be able to add some sort of event or something to run this that would kick this off in the initial flow, right? So let's see here. How can we do that from outside the data repeater? Where's an event button? Can we get that to trigger? And if we go in here, make sure we're in the right active form flow. If it's not seen in here, we'll try this outside of it and see if we can just access it from there. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if it wasn't going to show. All right, let's try the active form flow from outside. But yeah, this would be the way to do it, is through advanced data repeater. So we'll say the event button is what's going to trigger it. We'll add our rule flow, and same sort of thing. Let's go to form rules, disable form data, data repeater. Selected item. Well, not just selected item, we want all of it, right? Item source. I wonder if I know there's a way to disable just that one, not the whole, data repeater. That's not the goal here.
Run the active form flow on the actual data repeater itself.
That's what I was looking for, but I was looking for a trigger on the outside form that would cause that to run.
There's no relation between those two, unfortunately.
So it would have to be something that's checked inside of here in order to cause that to work.
Yeah, correct. Because you can disable the whole thing, but not partial controls on that one.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what I worked with here. This is just disabling that one particular number box, so it can't be edited. I was just trying to figure out how to run that based on something that occurred outside of the data repeater, but I guess that wouldn't be possible.
Well, yeah. So what you could do is just have an event button on that other square right there, and then that would work there.
Okay. I think he wanted to disable it for all of one particular column or type. That was the goal.
You could definitely do it there for that, I believe. So, because like if in the active form, go back to the active form flow inside here.
Absolutely.
Then you'd have to test this. I'm not sure. Edit rule flow. And then inside, you have to have like a for each step. But if you go to Data Explorer on the left, Data Explorer,
Yep.
and then I think there's like all items list right there.
Right.
So you can for each, and I think, well, actually, let's just go to the data. If we go to form data, yeah. If you do form data and do there, I think that will disable all of them. See how there's current item? So current item would do that for just one. So like I disable control, it's only for that current item row that I click on.
Right.
But I believe we'd have to test it out. But for the form data one, if you just select the number box, then I believe it would do it for all of them. That would be the test to run.
Okay, that's what we got.
I would also
right now.
want it to work like on the entire column. Like, so if it is a let's say a standard quote, then they shouldn't be able to change the price. But if it's a claim back, then they can change the price now.
Right. And I think, but so go back and show the thing that we were just talking about, Greg. I believe, yeah, would you go back inside of it?
I see.
And Data Explorer. And then I believe over there, if you get the form data from here and disable that control, that's for the entire, that's for, I presume, be an all column thing. That I just don't know. We just have to test that out. But you'd utilize that property, set the enable to false, and see if that gets the result you're looking for.
That's what we're going to look at right now.
So, Christine, do you have any questions?
Well, it appears it only disables them individually.
Okay.
That also wouldn't allow the outside form to do that. We may have to go the CSS route with this.
I mean, I was thinking that my second option, if I couldn't do that, was that I could have two data grids, and then instead of doing, I could have just the two data grids, and depending on what's selected, then hide one or the like. They basically both start off hidden, and then once it's selected, it'll show one, and then it'll show the other, and those specific ones will have the fields that they can edit.
Gotcha. So you're
Does
just
that
picking
work?
which one to display. That would work. Yeah, there's as long as you have two data grids that are dynamically set like that, because they're both using, the report on that, which is going to be static, you can absolutely just choose to hide one and show the other. That would work.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. And the last question that we've got for today is from Marvin. Tried Magic CSS with the form in preview mode, still no response. Are you still unmuted? I think you're still
I'm here.
able to talk. Cool. Okay. So you're using the Magic CSS, I'm guessing, Edge extension? I thought it was a Chrome extension, but I guess I could be wrong on that.
It's apparently for both.
Oh, okay.
There's one for both. I have not tried this in Chrome yet.
I was just about to ask if it does.
I just normally do all my work in Edge, so.
I see, I see. So let's see, I don't currently have that extension installed. I can try and set that up. I think what we'll do is we'll try to I'll try running it at Edge. I can get that set up after lunch and learn and message you back if I'm running into any issues, if it's Chrome related, Edge related, or
Okay,
just show you the exact steps that I'm taking from there to be able to
okay,
find which CSS is which.
that works.
All right. Well, I think looking at the time, that's probably going to wrap it up for today, unless anyone else had any additional questions. Going once. Going twice. All right. Thank you all for coming to Decisions Lunch and Learn. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day today.